Hello, this is Anjana and welcome to the third session on Ruby on Rails. In the previous session, we built a Rails application from scratch and printed Hello World on the browser. In this session, we will see what a resource is and then create an action for this resource and submit a form. Now, what is a resource? A resource is a term used for a collection of similar objects, such as products, orders, etc. You can create, read, update, and destroy items for a resource. And these operations are referred to as CRUD operations. Rails provides a resources method which can be used to declare a standard REST resource. Let's say for our kitchen store application that we created in our last session, we would want to create a resource product representing kitchen products. These products would need to be sold on the online kitchen store website. Then we would add a line, resources : products, to our routes.rb file of kitchen store. This line is indicative of a resourceful routing. Resourceful routing allows you to quickly declare all of the common routes for a given resourceful controller. Instead of declaring separate routes for listing your items, creating an item, displaying an item, editing an item, updating an item, and deleting an item or a resourceful route declares them in a single line of code. Resources products. Browsers request pages from Rails by making a request for a URL using a specific HTTP method such as get, post, patch, put, and delete. Each method is a request to perform an operation on a resource. A resource route maps a number of related requests to actions in a single controller. When your Rails application receives an incoming request for get products 2345 to see a product whose ID is 2345, it asks the router to map it to a controller action. If the first matching route is resources products, Rails would dispatch that request to the show method on the products controller with ID 2345 obtained from the request parameters hash. In Rails, a resourceful route provides a mapping between HTTP verbs and URLs to controller actions. A single entry in the routing file that we have specified here creates 7 different routes in your application, all mapping to the products controller. Let's execute the command. Rake routes to see all the routes for the resource product. This is the route for listing all the products. This is for creating a new product. And this is for returning an HTML form for creating a new product. Edit product is for it should return an HTML form for editing an existing product. The product path is to show a particular product. Patch and put HTTP verbs initiate a request to be able to update a specific product, and delete is for deleting a specific product. Because the router uses the HTTP verbs and URLs to match inbound requests, 4 URLs map to 7 different actions, and the different actions are index, create, new, edit, show, update, and destroy. Now that we have our routes configured for the resource product, let us move on to creating an action for creating a new product. This is the C and R from CRUD, standing for creation and reading. For this, we would need to create a controller to place the action for creating the product. We can use one of the Rails generators for this. So let's run the command Rails generate controller products. This will create our controller products controller in the app controllers directory. Let's open it. You'll see that it's empty. So let's add our first resourceful action, which is new. This is to the new action would give us the HTML form to enter values for creating a new product. So once we create the action, let's create a view file that the user should be able to see to be able to enter the details for creating a product. So let's go to the views directory, and there you have the products folder that was created by the generate command, and let's create a new file and name it new.html.erb. Recall the convention over configuration policy of Rails, where Rails understands it needs to display a view file with the same name as the action new. Now let us add some minimum lines of code there to see it render on the browser, to check if the mapping and rendering succeeded. Let's add h1. This is our new product creation page, and save it. Now let's start our web server. Rails server, and let's navigate to http localhost 3000 /products/new. Recall that this was one of the routes that were generated when we ran the routes command. Now here you will see the text that we had added to the view template, indicating that our mapping and rendering was a success. Now let's create a form here to be able to add details for a product. So let's go back to our IDE and create a form here. Now a product would need at minimum a name, a description, and a price. So let's create text fields for name and price, and a text area for description, as it can require more than just a word or two to describe a product that would need to be sold online. So to create a form within the new .html.erb template, we can use a form builder. The primary form builder for Rails is provided by a helper method called form4. To use this method, let's add form4 and specify the resource that this form is for, and specify the block, and let's end the block with an end. Now let's add the text fields, form fields for name, description, and price, and let's put that within paragraph tags. Let's create a label for our name first, and then create the text field for name. The text field is a Rails helper that basically generates a form text field. So let's do the same for price. And let's add the description here. And description, and define it as a text area. Last, of all, let's create a submit tag and save it. Now let's refresh the page, and you'll see the neat form where you can enter the details of a product that would need to be saved into our database. Now when you call form for, you pass an identifying object for this form, and in this case it's a symbol colon product. So this tells the form for, it tells the form what this is for. This is for creating a new product. But there is one problem with this form. Now, if you look at the action, or if you look at the if you inspect the HTML, you'll notice that the action points to the very same form, products new. You definitely don't want to post the form back to the form itself. You want it to go somewhere else. So this can be done easily with the URL option of form for. So you can specify URL, and it should point to, let's stop here and think for a bit. Typically in Rails, the action that is used for a new form submission like this is called create, because when you add values for a product, you would need to create it. So the action should point to create, and we will create the create action in the controller shortly. But just before that, let's specify the action name here. So now the products controller will send a post request to the controller pointing to the action create. In other words, it will post the form parameters which will contain the product information to the create action. So now let's try submitting the form. Let's put some values here for the product that we are creating, and for now we'll leave the description blank, and let's submit the product. Yes, so you'll notice this error. The action create could not be found. So you now need to create the create action within the products controller. Let's minimize this and go back to the IDE and take the products controller, and let's define a def create method. Now if you go back to the action and resubmit, it says missing template. This is because of Rails convention over configuration principle, where it's looking for a view file with the same name as the action create but couldn't find one. So let's ask the action create to render something else instead. Instead of creating a create template, let's just ask it to render something. So let's ask it to render text, and specify product params product.inspect. So this is the parameters that you get from the form, and you have called an inspect on it, and you will be rendering that text back to the browser. So now let's go back to the browser and resubmit the form, and you'll notice that the form fields are being rendered here. So this brings our third session to an end. Just to summarize what we covered in this session, we learned how to work with resources, how to create a form and submit it. In the next session, we will look a little bit deeper into the code and learn how to save the product into the database. Before we end this session, would you like to take up a fun challenge? See if you can answer these questions. 1. What is a collection of objects that you would define in Rails to do basic CRUD operations on? 2. What is the Rails way of seeing all the available routes for an object? Thanks for watching, and bye for now.